This is the Stacking Days Podcast, the podcast about the healing experience of recovery for people of color by people of color. This show is for the purpose of education and connection and is not a replacement for therapy or recovery care. We suggest you seek out the support of a trained professional for guidance with your specific circumstance. I'm your host, Ray Donovan, and I've been alcohol-free since September 2021. Welcome to the show. Hey y'all, what's going on? Welcome back to the show, the Stacking Days Podcast. Again, I'll start this the way I start every show. I'm very excited about today's guest. We got Jay Chase in the house. I'm going to hand the mic over to him in a second, but I mean, he is a multifaceted, individual, and he's got an amazing story that he's, spending some time with us today to share. But the brother is a founder, an entrepreneur, a podcaster. He's a coach. He's an inspirational speaker. I'm sure he's probably about 20 other things that I didn't even list out here. But I'm really, really happy to have him on the show today. So I'm going to hand the mic over to Jay so he can give us an introduction of himself. And then also, Jay, if you wouldn't mind giving us, a 10 to 15 minute kind of recap on basically what the topic of this show is, our struggles with alcohol, where it started for you. And then we can kind of go from there. Welcome to the show, Jay.
Absolutely. Yeah, man. Yeah. Super excited to be on this show, just to be seen, to be heard, to be recognized. And I just want to say thank you and shout out to you and all the listeners. Like I am truly committed to your development, to getting where you want to be. And that's why I become the best version of me. So a little bit about me, man. I'm a leadership development coach. I work with people all over the world. I train leaders, add value to leaders so they can multiply the value to others. That's what I do. My passion though, what I do is close to my heart is I help individuals in active recovery manage destructive emotions and habits so they can maintain their sobriety and live a full and effective life. I'm an independent contractor at Reframe. Like you said, I'm a founder, man. We have the Jay Chase coaching and development where we actually train leaders all over the country. I do leadership development all over the country. I'm a consultant and emotional intelligence practitioner. Too many titles. I don't like it. I don't like titles. I don't like titles. I don't, because it's not who I am. And I talk about all this leadership, but really what it comes down to, man, is how we lead ourselves. 2017, man, I woke up in a jail cell. I didn't know what happened the night before. I didn't know I had blood on my shirt. I didn't know how I got there. Blood on my hands. I'm like, again, Jay, again, did you really do this again? And I pressed a little buzzer, and if anybody's ever been woken up in that predicament before, there's a little buzzer on the wall till you got to hear the command tower. And I said, what's my bond? Because this isn't the first time that I've woken up in jail before, right? You know what I mean? I know the next steps. I know the process. And I said, what's my bond? And they said, no bond. I said, no bond? What you mean no bond? And I kind of had to step back and take a moment and really collect myself and say, all right, Jay, did you kill somebody? What happened? Is this the rest of your life? Are you done? You gone? Bro, you 23. That's it. That's all you gave the world was 23 years, dog. And then I pressed the buzzer again. What's the charges? I finally, I had to know. And they said probation violation. I felt like there was a huge weight lifted off my shoulder. I knew what I've done. I've already pled guilty to it. I can face it. I'm like, I can do the consequence. It's only 11 years. It's not the rest of my life. That's still a long time, though. It's only 11 years, not the rest of my life.
Especially when you're 23, I would imagine you're looking at that saying to yourself, that's almost half of, how long I've been out here.
100%. And so luckily, God willing, that I didn't have to go do 11 years, but the judge executed my sentence and gave me a 120-day shock in prison. And it was basically like, if you keep making the decisions that you're making, this is where you're going to end up going. And so I did 30 days in county. I did 120 days in prison. And when I was released on July 1st, 2017, what's the first thing we do? We check our social medias. We logging into the Snapchats, the Facebooks, the Instagrams. And I didn't have a single message from me. Not a single person that I used to kick it with, drink with, go out with. I mean, I used to be that dude, right? Bottle service, suits in the club. I was selling cars at the age of 19 And there wasn't a year that I didn't see under six figures. At the age of 19, I'm in a college town. I'm kicking with everybody who's 19 going to college. So I got more money than everybody, right? I'm that guy. And not a single message from any one of those people when I got out of prison 6 months later. And I said, oh, I get it. They really, really didn't miss me. They really don't like that version of me. And it drove me to a place of, one, all the healing and reflection that I did in prison and why I'm there. I turned 24 in prison. Those first 6 months, I was one forced, but spent by myself. And then the next 6 months, I just wanted to be a good person. That's it. I just wanted to be a good person. And that is what's birthed the version of me of who I am now.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man. I mean, I can only imagine what it was like coming out, after having spent so long kind of, locked away and not having a proverbial home to come to, right? Place, people, not waiting for you on the other side. That's tough.
And yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I am curious, how did you, and you don't have to kind of get into the exact circumstance that landed you in this kind of pivotal moment in your life where you had to make a decision, but what did your life look like leading up to, you being in prison? I mean, I'm assuming that you had some folks that, you thought you were close with, what led you to that point? And then I want to talk about what happened over the course of your incarceration that, I mean, effectively, it sounds like that was almost like your rehab, or, your detox. And I want to talk about that too.
Yeah, man. Before prison, man. It's crazy because my life before prison and after prison didn't change. The only thing that changed was that I didn't drink. That's the only thing that changed. Because before prison, very social guy in high school, college. I went to college to do broadcast journalism, but I actually dropped out of college when I discovered the car business. Some guy rolls up downtown. I'm drunk. I'm 19, whatever. And some guy rolls up in a Mercedes Benz, and I was like, "Hey, what'd you do to get that Mercedes Benz?" He was like, "The car business." I was like, "The car business got you a Mercedes?" He's like, "The car business has got me a lot of things in life." I said, "Well, I sold shoes. I can sell cars. I'm a people person. That's who I am, right? And one, it's my natural gift of communication. That's just who I am." And so I got into the car business when I was 19 years old. My first year I made 70,000. My second year I made 100,000. And I catapulted my drinking because although I dropped out of college, I grew up in this town. I played football, high school ball in this town. I know everybody. We got the University of Missouri right here in the heart of the town. So everybody who went from high school to the University, I was still that guy. I was still involved. I was just, hey, I didn't take that route. I found my gift, what I'm good at, and I'm making a good living. And so I got to show up, but I was so immature that I've always wanted to be exclusive that I had to show out. I showed out. I bought everybody everything. And that's where the problem with alcohol was. It wasn't alcohol. It wasn't me drinking, but it was my desire for exclusivity and instant validation. So bottle service, shots. And I would overdo it because I wanted other people to see my glory. And it don't work like that, right? And so that led me to fights. That led me to not care, bad attitude. That led me getting locked up. That led me to DWIs, from driving in the BMW to driving in, nice cars, to all the nice things you can have in life. I had them, but I was trying to put on for other people who, in the end, didn't care for me.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm curious, when you were incarcerated, you come out. And you said the only thing that changed was the fact that you didn't drink. So did you try to kind of fit back into that same lifestyle once you came out? Because there's an adage, right, where, and I don't know who said this, but it's something along the lines of, you can't heal in the same environment that, you became ill. So I'm just curious, like, at what point in time, if that was the case when you came out and you were, still basically the same Jay, at what point in time did you realize, okay, that, I've removed the alcohol, identified that was a problem, but I have other work that I need to do in order to get to the place that I want to get to? And how did you do that in that familiar environment of your hometown that you basically kind of grew up in and, went through it in?
Yeah, man. This is why I work with individuals in active recovery. I don't help people get sober. I don't tell people what they need to do to get sober. I don't tell them,
Mm,
I'm not the quit lit guy. I'm the growth and development guy. That's me.
cool.
That's who I am. And so what I did was spend that time alone in prison, and I didn't have a choice. It was either drink or go back to prison. Like, I still had 11 years hanging over me. That was just kind of the shock. So I didn't
Mm,
have a choice. I still had 5 years to do, but you're right. I still had to be me. So with this kind of like chain and ball, I was like, how can I still be me and still like I got freedom? And that's hanging out with my same friends. But the thing is, if I wanted to change my life, change myself, grow intentionally, right? I, I had to change myself and my environment, right? Like you touched on. And when I say environment, I say people, places, and things, right? You
mhm,
don't necessarily got to pack up and leave your environment, but I say you're just the people you involve with, the places you go, and the things that you do. Those are the only
mm,
things that create your environment. And if you're able to change yourself and your environment, growth will be fast and successful. But if you change yourself and not your environment, you can still achieve growth. It would just be slow and difficult. And
mhm,
so I learned that the hard way by not changing my environment. Probably like the first 60 days that I came home, that I didn't change.
mhm,
I wanted to go. I still went out to the bars. I was just sober. Hey, bro, I can't drink. Like, I had that chain and ball. So that's kind
mhm,
of was my guiding light my first 2.5 years of sobriety. But it wasn't to the fact where I got a false positive on a drug test because I was sitting
mm,
in the car with the homies when they were hotboxing, where I was like, oh, I got to change my environment too. Otherwise, I'm still going. I almost went back for something I didn't do. And I'm like,
mm,
wow. Wow. Okay. So yeah, if I'm really going to do this growth and development thing, and if I really want to be a good person, I got to spend time on me. And so what I did was I went inward. I focused on
mhm.
myself, and it wasn't like, oh, I can't hang out with you. It's just like, yo, I got to do different things. So instead of going to the club after I got off work at night, I went to the pool hall and shot pool. I learned how to play pool. I play pool really well now. And that's because I put that focus and attention somewhere else rather than, oh, what am I missing? I'm not going to let them determine when I can have my freedom.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love, people, places, and things, right? And oftentimes when folks are trying to kind of cure themselves from drinking, or they literally think like a geographical move is going to do the trick, when oftentimes it's a lot more, it's deeper than that, right? It's the people that you're attracting into your life, it's the things that you're doing, right? So I love the fact that you've made that distinction. Because I've certainly have moved around a fair amount of time in my 20 some odd years, when I was drinking, and that didn't do it. I needed to do more. So hats off to you on recognizing that in that moment of the hot box, that there was something very wrong here, and it ran right straight in the face, and it was in conflict with the growth that you're trying to seek out. And I'm glad you didn't get caught up there.
Hey man, imagine, and I always tell myself, and I ask a lot of my clients this, and I want to ask the listeners, who would benefit if you became the best version of you? Like,
Mm,
who around you would benefit? Because most of the time we can't do it for ourselves. Think about the times where the alarm clock goes off, and how many times do you hit snooze before you actually get out of bed when you got to do it for yourself? But if your spouse, your kids, your mom, your granny, your auntie is waiting on you somewhere, and that alarm clock goes off, I'm out the bed. So
hmm
really think about who would benefit if you became the best version of you. And I really had to ask myself that with what I wanted to do. And now thinking about, what if I didn't listen to that dude that I was back then, and all these people that I'm affecting now wouldn't benefit or be closer to the best version of themselves.
That's awesome. Totally. Yeah. We talk a little bit about on this show about the rippling effect of one's healing and one's own growth, right? And that's a testament to it right there. Is that the actions that you took, are still reaping rewards for folks today.
Yeah.
And they're benefiting from you having made that decision to move into a new direction. I want to really talk about your work as as a basically a growth coach. Particularly for those who are in active recovery, for someone who's kind of coming into your space and if they've reached out to Jay, and they're newbies, right, just kind of had just got their feet wet in the world of sobriety, and they're trying to navigate that. What do you do to embrace them into your process, and how do you kind of get them to a point where they're able to facilitate their own growth, without maybe a lot of your guidance? What does that process look like?
Man, yeah. I have one principle. We got to know ourselves in order to grow ourselves. That's it. That's it. And like somebody, and I honestly ask every single one of my clients, how well do you know yourself? Because I didn't know myself as well as I thought that I knew myself. Whether when I started sobriety, when I got into sobriety, 90 days into sobriety, 6 years down the road into sobriety, I'm still growing, right? So we got to know ourselves in order to grow ourselves. And so what I do, and actually created this method for those that I work with, is DISC influence recovery. So the DISC assessment is a human behavior psychology tool that will tell you your natural style versus your adaptive style, and who you turn into under stress in environments that you're unfamiliar with, around people you're unfamiliar with, and how you respond to systems and procedures that are set by others. And I actually take the DISC assessment and tell them, study this, study yourself, become an expert on yourself, and then give yourself what you need to grow. And I incorporate the wheel of life, right? Set one goal in these 7 areas, and you'll be able to focus on your growth. I promise you that. Once you know yourself, you can grow yourself. But what's that one goal in your mind, your body, your soul, your intimate relationships, your networking relationships, your business, and your finances? Just set one goal in those 7 areas, because I believe in true development. I don't believe in just getting rid of the alcohol and I'm cured, or I can fight a craving. I believe in it only takes changing one thing that we do every single day in order to change our entire life. So if you drink every single day, if you take away alcohol, your entire life will change. So now we got to focus on all the other areas besides just alcohol. And so that's why I say I work with individuals in active recovery. I prefer 90 plus days alcohol free. If somebody comes to me before that, I tend to tell them to revisit me when you are 90 days. But then once we get there, somebody who's like 90 days, I'm ready for this. That's the first place we start, is the wheel of life, and how well do you know yourself?
So in that, when this is a modality that you've developed, right, and it has structure to it today. When you were going through it yourself and trying to identify who Jay was, like, what tools did you turn to then, versus the tools that you're now able to pass on to a lot of the folks that you work with?
Yeah, man. Journaling, self-assessing, understanding the why under the why under the why under the why. Man, when you're in prison in a little concrete box, you get a lot of time to think, man. Mm-hmm. And I really got to know myself. Like, just one practice that I did in prison, I was like, why am I so angry at everybody around me? I'm in prison. They're not. I'm here. They're not serving this time. My mom's not serving this time. My dad's not serving this. Why am I so angry at everybody? Right. And so then I literally read a book called Forgiveness is a Choice, which, I mean, just set me free. I couldn't tell you one thing that I really got from the book, but it hyperdrive me into doing this practice of writing a forgiveness letter to my father, my mother, my sister, and myself. But with that it wasn't just a letter. It was very raw and real with myself for the first time. I own my truth as I perceived it. And I wrote on the front page, I hate you for, I hate you for, I hate you for. And on the back of that, I wrote, I forgive you for, I forgive you for, I forgive you for. And I filled the pages up, front and back, with the I hate you fors and the I give you fors. And it set me free. And that really started the inner work, because I let go of the power that they had over my life, of me just moving in anger. And then I was able to focus on me. So I let go, and I didn't tell my mom, my sisters, or about the letters, but I read it to my dad, and that really set me free. But I had to start that practice on myself first.
That's I was going to ask you, did you ever ultimately end up confronting any of the folks that you wrote the letters to? You answered the question. Because there is this idea of like, how do you forgive someone without having actually received an apology from them? That's like something that I've been thinking about recently, and I've talked to a few of our guests about it too, and it really does come down to your own shift, right? And your own degree of acceptance and understanding to be able to move forward. I wanted to also ask you about when it comes to your coaching practice and your leadership practice. What are how do folks walk in? Do they walk in with a sense of the sky's the limit for me, or are they walking in with a degree of fear around maybe their inability to continue on their journey? And so how do you kind of like reel them in and give them the kind of the mindset they need to buy in so that they can be successful?
That's good, man. That's good. That's a good question. Because, honestly, either way they walk in, it's the same practice. It's the same way. I'm about to give y'all the sauce. I swear. If anything resonates, if anything hits, y'all better share this with a friend. But it's the fact that they walk in and I say, talk to me about failure. Who do you turn into during failure? After failure? Recall your biggest failure. Who did you turn into? And they'll tell me. And I say, who do you turn into when you're drinking? Well, those people sound a lot alike. So it's not the alcohol. Everything rises and falls on leadership. And leadership is nothing but influence. And your influence will only run as wide as your character runs deep. So when you peel it back all the layers, I do character development. We work on the person that you turn into when you experience failure. We learn how to operate in our natural gifts and be our natural selves and go where we're naturally celebrated so we don't have to cope.
That's a deep, kind of perspective to take for someone, because you're literally, changing the mindset away from the substance itself, and the substance almost just becomes this kind of backdrop, right? And it's dealing with the core individual, as opposed to looking at the substance necessarily as being the issue. Because I think that's another thing that you find when you're moving into sobriety, that like, the substance and your kind of propensity to use the substance doesn't actually define who you are. Right. In a lot of ways, you still got to take care of that person, whether or not you are drinking versus whether or not you're not drinking. I would imagine that, in working with the folks that you work with, the process of that development looks very different from, 90 days to year one, to their first year of sobriety versus the work that they're doing from year one go forward. Is there any distinction for you as, in a coach and kind of guiding, one through that kind of that first kind of pivotal year after they've kind of made that 90 days on their own, and then transitioning into that second year, which I'm in right now? And I recognize even in my own experience, year two, in being away from substance kind of open. And once you've had that clarity that behind you from year one, it kind of opens up a whole new kind of perspective on the journey. But I'm curious what that looks like for you, having gone through your own experience, but also probably having worked with many people who have now kind of made that transition and have had that early success and are trying to tie it to some kind of longer sustainable success. What does that look like for you, and what are the signs that you're looking for?
Yeah, man. Really, when we make the shift of it, one, let me back up. Congratulations, too, right? Because year two, I have always said, is harder than year one. You feel like you accomplished something. You feel like you did it. I'm cool, right? It's no sweat off my back, right? And year two, you got to be like, all right, now I know what I like to do. Now I got to make the decision. Do I do, right? I believe that there's three types of people in the world. There's people who don't know what they like to do, don't know what they want to do, and they don't do anything, right? Those people are confused and lost. That was year one. We're confused, we're lost. It only takes 7 days to get sober, but it takes a lifetime to develop, is the way that I look at it, right? And so year one, we don't know what we want to do. We don't know what we want to do. And so year two is that we know what we want to do. We have some clarity, but we still don't exactly do it or go after it, because we're like, yo, what if all fear of the unknown, don't know, can we sustain this? Is this life? But then there's a third type of person, the person who knows what they want and they go do it because they paid the price to go do it. And when you resolve for yourself to say that, hey, right now I'm not going to drink, I'm going to go after what I want to do. And that typically comes in year 2. And so most of my clients go from depending on alcohol to owning their own business in year 2. And now here I am doing my thing, founder, coach, speaker, you know what I mean? And I can only develop somebody as much as I've developed. I can't take you and develop you in somewhere where else. That's bad coaching. Quit trying. Stop it, guys. I'm not going to give y'all a workout plan. I'm not. I'm going to tell you to pick up a journal and a pen. You know what I mean? But yeah, Jay, I want to grow some muscles. I can grow your mind. I can grow your spirit. I can grow your relationships. I can't grow your muscles.
That's great, man. Well, let's put the mirror back on you, right? So, you've been sober now for what, 6 years at this point or so?
Yeah, man.
What are some of the tools that you use on a daily basis, now having crossed many milestones in your own journey and clearly have, attained a degree of kind of, success in a lot of ways, both, personally, inwardly, and then also outwardly. What are some of the tools that you turn to, when things maybe even to this day are a little challenging and somewhat ambiguous for you?
Man, that's a beautiful question because it always continues and needs work, right? Like we always need work. The biggest tool for me now, being this deep in, is that I've accepted and known the fact that my recovery or healing, right? I love how we differentiate the thing.
Yeah.
Go look up recovery, y'all. Go look up the definition of recovery, the process of healing. Anyway,
well, hold on a second. Let's actually. I want to hear the answer to your question, but I do want to revisit this concept around recovery versus healing, and I would love to hear what your perspective on it is. But because I've thought a lot about this, and I've also find myself, bouncing back and forth between using the term recovery that many people use in this space versus what I feel most kind of emotionally inclined to say is that it's a healing process, right? So let's get back to that. But I do want to hear about some of the things that you use today to keep you, on the path that you want to continue to be on.
Absolutely. And what I've grown to learn in my growth and my development. Have you noticed that that's what I call it now, is growth and development? Mm-hmm. But what I've come to learn in my growth and development, that it's not about me. This whole journey is not about me. It's not. Mm-hmm. And so I wake up with the tool of how can I add value? One, I have to be fruitful to myself, and then I become valuable. And then I can multiply value to others, and then I can govern it, right? And so it's the fact of how can I add value to myself, and then how can I value and impact others, right? And so when I go out in the world, when I post on social media, when I go to these interviews, when I go to different states and get on stages, it's that I look for value. I look to how can I add value. I think of ways to add value. I do things that add value. And that literally comes from a place of how can I add value to your life? And that's the only tool that I can possibly say that I use now. And I read a really good book every single day. That's all. I read a really good book every single day. But it really comes down to that this journey is no longer about me. It's about how I can impact and influence the world now.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of motivation that can come with one developing like a servant's kind of mindset. A service mindset where, to your point, you're looking to how you add value to the folks who are around you. And in doing so, that value comes back, right? If that's something that you hold as being important. So thank you for sharing that. But I feel like we touched on something. I want to get back to it. This concept, and mind you, I don't want to steer anybody away from any terminology. This show is not about, it's not about dogma. It's not about, vocabulary, but I am curious because, the words that we use are can be impactful. Right. So I'm curious what are your thoughts around, the differentiation between the word, recovery in the journey of sobriety and healing and, are they kind of one and the same, or do you actually feel that they're two different things?
Man, I love that question. I think you're the first person out of like hundreds of interviews I've done that have actually asked me that question. And I, to this day, I don't use either one of them, as in healing or when it comes to running from alcohol, right? It's growth and development for me. But recovery, I look at recovery as the recovery of my life. You know how much I gave to alcohol? Money, time, relationships, expenses, arguments, emotional, all of this. And so we're just going to put recovery as I'm in recovery. I have a problem with alcohol. No, I'm in recovery. I'm trying to get my life back because I gave it away. Right. And then we look at it, the healing process. Okay. No, I'm trying to heal. I'm trying to heal from the hurt, from the pain of everything that the alcohol caused. And so when we take all of that, I always ask my clients, be careful what you ask for. Be careful what you pray for, because I so long wanted emotional healing during my addiction, during my drunkenness. And I asked my clients, if emotional wellness showed up as a prison cell, would you still want it? And for me, no, you couldn't pay me a meal to go down this track that I just went down. Right. But that's the growth and development of the healing process that I had to go down. And so I got to do that in order to recover the things that I've lost. So I don't separate. I didn't do any programs. I didn't do no AA. I didn't do no SMART. I didn't do this. I didn't do that. I didn't have a coach. I was forced to be sober, and I hated every single moment of it. But I grew into the man that I am today because of that forced sobriety. When I speak, I don't even beat on the sober drum. I'm an independent contractor, and I bring leadership development to that platform. It's not that I talk about sober and this and triggers and that. No, that's cool. That's not what I'm an expert in. I'm an expert in becoming a better version of yourself all around.
Do you feel as though that one can pursue authentic growth if they haven't acquired a certain degree of healing, or can those two things be done in parallel as far as your work is concerned?
If you're not healing, you're not growing.
Okay, I could appreciate that for sure.
Yeah, 100%.
Cool. Well, I got a couple questions that I want to ask you, and I know that you're not one to you coach folks who are in active sobriety, right? Not folks who are looking to become sober. So I want to just park that for a second. But what I wanted to ask you is, did you identify alcohol as being an issue for you? I mean, considering the fact that you were forced into sobriety through incarceration, had you ever previous to that recognized that was a problem for you?
Like blindly. And it's so funny because we know it's a problem, right?
Right.
We know it's a problem. Like when I would show up, they'd be like, Jay, don't get too drunk tonight. You only say that when it's a problem, right? If I go out with $2,000 in my pocket and I wake up with $3, it's a problem, right? But I was so in tune with my natural gifts of who I am when it comes to communication. I would take an L for a bad night out drinking, go make it back on the lot, and then go do it again. And so I didn't have a problem. I was insane.
I mean, and obviously you recognize that it wasn't serving you clearly, right? Because you didn't add it back into your life, once you were pursuing growth. So that makes total sense. So I guess that my one question that I have then, and, as we kind of approach kind of the tail end of our conversation, is that for those who are not looking at a prison cell, as it relates to, removing substances specifically from their life so that they can pursue growth, and they don't necessarily know, what some of the first steps they're going to take, because these are all voluntary steps that they need to take. Being that you are not one who advises folks on how to get sober, but have done it yourself in a very unique way, what would you advise those people who want to be on the road to recovery, want to get to that 90 days, but they're not quite sure how they make that paradigm shift for themselves into a space where they can start to actually heal and to start growing themselves?
Man, that's good. Self-evaluation. Start with self-evaluation. If we don't know ourselves, we can't grow ourselves because we don't know where to grow ourselves. Accidental growth is not the same as intentional growth. Let me just put that out there. Planning for tomorrow is not the same as going after growth today. So I always give this during every single one of my first calls, and I'm almost famous for it now within my clients and if my clients talk to each other. But it's like, I'm going to paint this picture of where you want to go and where we are now. Because like you said, if anybody wants to get on the road to recovery, even if we got in a car, you and I got in a car right now, right? And we wanted to go on a road trip and we typed in where we wanted to go, the GPS would still have to know where we're at in order to get us there. So where are we now? And I have 2 rules in coaching. Rule number 1, own your truth as you perceive it. That's it. Own your truth as you perceive it. And rule number 2, if you lie to yourself, you'll lie to anybody. So do you really want to get better?
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Last question, and then we'll wrap this up here. I am curious for you in those days leading up into you being, put in county and then ultimately, put in prison. For folks who are around you, the ones who truly cared about you, not folks who, when you got out, didn't pick up your call or, didn't shoot you a note on social, but the folks who truly cared about you, how would they have known that you might have been going through some things, in that period of your life without you being explicit in telling them that things are not necessarily what they all seem to be?
Oh, man. The amount of self-destruction around me. I didn't know how to ask for help. So I just destroyed everything until somebody asked if they could help. But that help showed up like a prison cell.
It's amazing it's amazing how things, in our lives show up, sometimes not even necessarily in packages that, we understand how to accept. I think that's amazing. Yeah. I'm glad you were able to accept it, Jay. And I'm glad that you came out of that space, committed to being a better man. And clearly 6 years later, you're still on that path of being a better man and helping others become better versions of themselves. So, huge shout out to you, man. I appreciate it. I do want to make sure that folks know where they can find you. For anyone who's listening, you probably can gather that Jay is, full of knowledge and inspiration that we can all use in this world that we're living in. So, Jay, where can we find you outside of just this episode of the Stacking Days podcast?
Yeah, man. If you Google "Don't Touch My Mindset," I'm all over there. Or Google Jay Chase, I'm all over there. If you're on Instagram, the Jay Chase. Any other socials, the Jay Chase. That's
cool.
It. The one and only.
The one and only. That is for sure, brother. That's for sure. Look, man, I appreciate you spending some time with me today. I really do appreciate it, and I'm sure we'll be in contact, man. And like I said, I think you're just doing amazing things out there. Everyone who's listening, go check Jay out. You won't regret it. I promise you that. He's an inspiration for sure. He's an inspiration to me. So, Jay, again, man, thanks for being on the show, and we'll talk soon.
Blessings, brother. Blessings, blessings, blessings. With love and gratitude. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Stacking Days podcast. If you'd like to get in touch with the show, email me at rdg@stackingdays.com or follow us on Instagram @stackingdays. If you like the podcast, please rate, review, subscribe, and by all means share it with a friend who you think needs to be invited into the conversation. Until we meet again, be well, one day at a time.